Hello, it's Doishi here for another little video. This time I thought I'd try something a little bit different, something I've been meaning to do for a bit, and that's basically just go through a league. So I've pre-recorded a league being played, no audio. I thought I'd just go back and commentate through it, maybe look at a few sort of play patterns, how I've approached situations, any mistakes I might have made, and see how we did. So, as with sort of my other recent videos, it's the same sort of list that I've been running. So, the 4-colour, what I dub Zero Respect Turbo list. So, we've got 3 Personal Tutor, 2 Preordained Split. I don't really like doing the full Personal Tutor as a 4 of, Street Wraith as a 3-4 of. I find that's a little too aggressive for sort of the playstyle I prefer. But I like sort of the balanced approach of half and half. 4-colour mana base. I think it's greedy sometimes, and there are times when occasionally you do get a little bit of an awkward mana situation, especially either missing that bad lands or needing to rely on having red up for a red blast, green up for decay, for example, and trying to acquire black for Doomsday. But it works out in the most part, so I'm still reasonably happy with the entire affair. So I've talked a bit at length about sort of my list, so I won't go into it this time around. But it's something that's done me pretty well. So let's move on to having a look at how we did. So when I recorded this, I was chatting in Discord with a friend of mine. So I had at least one person sort of yelling at me when I was maybe doing a couple of dodgy decisions, which we'll come across in a bit. But they're a relatively casual legacy player. They do a lot of sort of Delver decks and similar, so the opposite end of the spectrum to what my normal wheelhouse is. But it's always good to sort of get like an alternative perspective when you're playing, because otherwise you can get a little bit railroaded in your thinking and your play patterns. So always good to try and find a different way of thinking. So we'll jump into match 1. So on the draw, unknown opponent. And we see this lovely hand here, 7 cards, pretty reasonable. It's good. It's got pretty much everything we need. Bit of protection. It's got the titular card. We've got some cantrips and lands, so it will serve us quite nicely. So easy keep there. And we see what our opponent does. Mox Diamond, obviously immediately screaming lands, screaming turbo depths, more going towards lands now we see field, and obviously solidify that assessment when we see exploration and wasteland as well. So we can see it's going to be a bit of a fight for mana here. However, all we need to do is find a ritual and we're in a very good state. But our opponent had a very nice starting hand, get a early resource base. So this is great. Petal's really good. Petal allows us to sort of throw away this underground sea and find lands, and here finding the fetch is really good as well, because this basically lets us sort of underground sea will be wastelanded, we'll draw Misty, play Misty, Seiko, leave that uncracked, and then we're able to play Bayou Petal in the same turn, fetch Misty into sea, and win the same turn, holding up Edge of Autumn to cycle into a Lotus Petal for this Brainstorm in our hand. Because of this, so we've got a really nice clear game plan here. So we keep all this on top, because it's everything we want. Draw the land. Don't shuffle. There's some argument to keeping maybe the days on top or similar, in case we want to try and save the sea, but we're basically assuming that the sea is dead and gone. And it's important to note that although we could cycle the edge off the sea to get a card draw from the wasteland that will inevitably happen, we don't want to do that because that stops our chances of being able to then do the same turn kill once we get triple black open. Lands always has a really tough time with Doomsday. Their pretty much best way of fighting the entire deck is just mana denial. Pre-Doomsday, it's stopping, getting the black quantity required to cast the card. So they obviously know we don't necessarily have a ritual currently, but more importantly, post-Doomsday, they're there to try and deny us getting double blue. And they can do this with a number of tools. They've got Wastelands, they've got Ghost Quarter normally, some Richten ports, so it's difficult for them, but it's not impossible. So here we're just following the plan, play the Misty, nice and easy, and just hope that they don't draw anything of use. Now they do find the Richten port, and they obviously loaned the Wasteland back from before, so this can be quite awkward, and a nice little combo from them, so they definitely played this well. So here we go, you can see they're basically making us either use the Misty or lose it to the Wasteland. So we use it, elect to grab the island in the hopes that we can try and find a cantrip or cantrip into the next source. Unfortunately, Misty not able to grab the swamp, otherwise that's what we would go for. However, we do luck out and find the basic swamp by itself, so we just play that, say go, or it was play that Thoughtseize, say go. Thoughtseize not really a good card in this matchup at all. Our opponent, we know, is just playing lands, and they've got most of their useful cards out already. Anything more would, the most useful thing would probably be that newish red enchantment with the landfall exile trigger. I can never remember the name of it, but that's probably the next best card that we'd hope to grab off the Thoughtseize. So the Thoughtseize is our +1 card for when we go for the brainstorm pile, most likely. So interesting to note, they've just dredged an Abrupt Decay into their graveyard. So that's something to be wary of. We can't necessarily go for an Oracle pile which is not complete if they've got black or green open. So it's a good thing to note. If it was just a normal lands build, then we'd assume we need to play around punishing, well, double punishing fire for that sort of thing, but Abrupt Decay does change that equation slightly. So again, opponent has a really good board setup. Unfortunately, they don't have a quick clock to be able to get us with, and here you can see they recognise very crucially that it is the black mana they need to be fighting over. Thankfully, we find another land, again another fetch land, so we're hopefully going to be able to go over the top of our opponent's sort of port wasteland combo and get there in the end. So opponent, they've finally found a win condition, or at least committed the one that they discarded early on to the Mox Diamond, and start throwing out some zombies. So this is the key turn. So opponent elects not to port. Oh no, they do, sorry, they do elect to port, I think. Yeah. So we find Cavern, which is fine. So now is the go time. So just grab the sea, play the Bayou, play the Petal, and it's nice because we do have an island in hand. Now here's a really big punt on my part. So I got a little bit shoehorned or railroaded or blinkered or whatever you want to call it into a certain line here, which was wrong. So the astute of you will notice that we have both Edge of Autumn and Brainstorm in hand. So this will allow us to do what is colloquially known as a double cantrip pile. So we'd basically use one of them to get into our pile, grab an LED, and then use the other one whilst the LED is on the board, hold priority, crack them for blue, grab Ideas Unbound, and then we just Ideas Unbound into the entire stack. Now, this is a really simple pile, however, for some reason, I was just hyper fixated on this brainstorm. So instead of doing the smart thing, which would be a double cantrip pile into Ideas Unbound, Lotus Petal, play the Oracle, 0 cards left, completely avoids removal. Instead, I do something a bit silly and commit the Oracle into a potential Abrupt Decay blowout situation. So I think myself quite clever, overthinking this, where we basically build a brainstorm pile that allows us to cast Thoughtseize to check the coast is clear and land the Oracle. However, what happens is, obviously we've got a known draw on board, they've got the Nurturing Peatland on the board, and we also know that they've got the Sheltering Thicket in hand, so they have actually in fact 2 draw effects, maybe even more, available to them. So what I'm doing here is actually really, really dumb. So, you know, this is why this sort of review is good, because although, spoiler alert, this does work out, it shouldn't. I gave them an opportunity to be able to win around this when I really shouldn't have been able to. So always make sure to double check your hand, double check what tools you have available, and try not to get sort of too fixated on one line of thinking, because, you know, that sort of thing can lead to mistakes that are quite punishing. So here we go. Commit the Thoughtseize. See nothing but sort of lands. Unsurprisingly, however, as we said, they've got 2 draw available to them, and they can use both of them while still retaining green-black in terms of decay mana up. So we throw out everything, and it's even silly because I leave myself with 1 card left. So, you know, at this point, should have realised, but hey. So here we go, we've got Thassa's Oracle down, 1 card left in the library, so opponent very rightfully notices that we've left them an opportunity, so they go digging. And there you go, that was me explaining to my friend how I sort of messed up around the opening for decay. So very likely they would have 1, maybe 2 more in the deck. I wouldn't expect the full 4, although I could be proven wrong. And after their 2 extra draw attempts, Oracle lands, and thankfully we do fade the decay. So sideboarding wise, against lands is very easy here. We basically bring in Decay, bring in Force and Negation, and that's pretty much it. We take out some discard. Here I do in fact take out Duresses and 2 Dazes. I think normally I would actually take out all 4 discard pieces. I'm not sure why I thought at the time that I'd rather have Thoughtseize over Daze. However, you probably want to keep the Daze in, especially if you're bringing the Force Negations, just to keep your blue count high and to ensure that they are readily available. As most of their problem things are going to be sort of, you know, non-creature based. So I think not great sideboarding choice there. My sort of own personal mapping is normally take out the discard spells. However, I'm notorious for not following my own logic. So this hand, pretty good. We've got Doomsday, we've got land, we've got some cantrips. Again, we cry over the fact that there is not a Sorcery Speed Dark Ritual to fetch with this Personal Tutor. Oh no, wait, I think... okay, so I do mulligan that, and the reason being, it's probably a bit risky. I mean, actually, it's probably fine. I probably should have kept the 7. But this hand is fine. Basically, I think for the first hand I was prioritising sort of mana, because as I said before in game 1, their best way of beating you is mana denial, and keeping a 1 dual land only hand although you've got cantrips, can be risky. So we're rewarded with both robust mana and managing to draw into the Doomsday, and we find plenty of mana sources to help us along the way. So the plan here is just counter any problematic stuff they have and draw and play concurrent fetch lands in order to get black, or that was the thought. So it was debating whether we want to risk going for the ritual or trying to keep the sort of defined mana sources. So you see I actually risk it because they could have a number of things. They could play, I think it was the stage depths, like a quick stage depths is probably the biggest problem to play around, and like the luck sack that we are, we do manage to find the ritual effect. So yeah, I think it was playing, so with keeping those two fetches, we'd have to rely on doing nothing but playing those two fetches for a couple of turns, and then play the Underground Sea, cast the Doomsday. With the shuffle, we might be able to find a cantrip or a ritual to kind of progress our board state and be a bit more efficient with our mana. I believe was the reasoning, which I think is sound. I mean, keeping the two lands on top actually is totally fine. It's just a little slow. And if our opponent had gone sort of concurrent, just stage into depth, then that would be a real problem for us. But we do find the Dark Ritual, we do find the Doomsday, so we just fire it off. You can see here I start building a pile. I build pile, almost forgetting ideas Unbound. So I managed to put that in. I then need to consider a Mindbreak Trap as part of the things I want to play around. And we've got this Lion's Eye Diamond in hand, which is an interesting consideration. And I think I do build around it. So I changed my mind after thinking about Mindbreak Trap. And not just Mindbreak Trap slash a blast effect as well. So this is me assuming that they wasteland or take us off the Underground Sea in some way, and or take us off the island with maybe a Richten port. And so I build something a little bit slower, a little bit more resilient, to enable us to try and go off in one go. So what I do is place Street Wraith on top. Just say go. The idea behind this pile was take it a little bit slower, wait to see what they do. If they try and crop rotation for something fast like Dark Depths or a Wasteland, then obviously we'll force that, especially when they're not representing something like Veil or Red Blast to protect it with. So snap force this. Thankfully we do have the Force of Will. Send that away. Wait to see what happens, and if the opponent presents some weakness, so they tap out all their mana, then definitely we would have cycled Street Wraith, cracked LED to get into Oracle. However, our opponent does graciously concede the match to us, probably not having too many tools in their arsenal that could help with that. So, you know, some dubious decisions, but I would say the matchup is favourable enough that even despite the sort of obvious play mistakes there, we did manage to navigate through it. So, Unknown, 7, throw that away, keep the 6. So the 7, it had too much mana, not enough action. The 6 is a really good balance. It allows us to sort of turn 1, grab the Doomsday, and do a little bit of cantripping as well. Unfortunately, we might not have time to play out this hand how we want because of the Delver of Secrets that lands in front of us. But we do find the Ritual, which is brilliant, so I decide to just risk it and throw this Delta into potential basically throw this personal tutor into potential days. I mean, if they daze it, that's, we're already under the gun with the turn 1 Delver. But we have, again, the Brainstorm and Preordain to find what we need. And thankfully, they let it through. So now, interestingly, Delver does not flip. So very likely that they've drawn another creature or a wasteland or something. So they just play and pass. So we draw our Doomsday. Now, it's Delver. I would be really loath to try and go off versus Delver if they've, with no protection. So I really do want to try and find something like a discard spell or, a force to try and get this Doomsday through. Preordain doesn't find anything, so throw that away. Finds another land, which is not great, to be honest. But we pass because jamming here would put us at risk of just getting blown out by daze, by force, any number of things. So opponent shows that they're on Grixis. I mean, the Bloodstained Mire probably gives that away. And they do find the Wasteland. So I debate whether to Brainstorm here. Decide not to. There's no reasoning to. Again, it just walks into, their soft permission. And with this Delver continuously not flipping, we're not under under too much hurry here. So we just chill, brainstorm a little bit, try and sculpt our hand, see what's what. And this is me being sure that they have some sort of soft permission, but brainstorm just resolves. And we do find with it the Personal Tutor. So Personal Tutor is kind of good here, because what it does is allow us to actually go and find some discard magic, some discard. So we throw out the Trot, I believe. Oh no, it's turn 3, we got Wastelanded, that was it. So don't have a spare land drop to, safely get the Personal Tutor, so we just aggressively, I'm confident in my deck delivering, so I just throw out the Personal Tutor and they daze. So that's fine. So that one would have got the duress if it had resolved. And again, we're still looking for protection here. However, with the second Delver of Secrets, gonna have to find it very soon, or at the very least just try and disrespect the entire affair. So we find an Edge of Autumn. So at this point it's not getting much better. If I have to do a pass the turn pile, then I'm very likely to die to double Delver of Secrets. So I just jam here, hoping that they don't have anything. Seeing as they've not flipped either of their Delvers for a while, they haven't cast any cantrips. I basically just go for it. Now, there's some argument here. Basically, I debated whether to try and play around days or not. So, if I disrespected it entirely, what I'd do is just immediately cycle Edge of Autumn into Ideas Unbound, Ideas Unbound into Petal Petal, Street Wraith Oracle, and see what's what. However, the problem with that is if they have a daze, get blown out by daze, Delvers flip, I get attacked for 6, and I can't cycle Street Wraith anymore. I do just go for it though. So here it was basically decide whether to run into days or run into the potential of sort of Delvers flipping plus a bolt. You know, they had the days, and as you say, you can't beat everything. However, our opponents, you know, they don't seem to have luck flipping Delvers, so we gamble on maybe this lack of luck continuing. And lo and behold, they are still unable to flip their 2 human wizards. So they get into the red zone, and we've still got a chance. We just have to fade one more draw step slash upkeep trigger, and also hope that they have not been holding a bolt in hand this entire time. They weren't, but they do have another 3 power to commit to the board, so they do take game 1. Now against Delver, it's always better to sort of go a bit lighter. I do bring in the carpets against opposing tempo, bring in sort of 3 veils. I think I probably should have only brought 2 veils in, and maybe the Flusterstorm wasn't the best idea either. I think I probably overboard a little bit. As I've discussed before in the Discord, I think the best way to approach this matchup is just hope that your sort of early game hand goes well against their early game hand, and rely on the power of turn 1, turn 2 Dark Ritual Doomsday days backup. Saying that though, I do take out the Personal Tutors here. Recently there was some discussion on keeping them in to facilitate the early play, and actually I think there is a lot of merit to that. So I might change how I approach this going forwards. But I think the paranoia of surgical extraction is a little too great, especially given a lot of players' sort of habits of throwing it off any which way. Now this hand is okay, it's a little bit mana light, and it's got a few duds. The idea is I'm bound to the LED. However, it's got a Doomsday, it's got mana, it's got some cantrips, and it's got a Force of Will, so it's definitely not the worst. And you really don't want to go down too much on cards versus Delver because you know, it's already an uphill battle, and that just makes it harder. So we go for the Brainstorm. Opponent, I think, you know, quite rightly senses a bit of Blood and Water. We haven't played a land beforehand, so just opts to aggressively daze. Obviously, if they have a Wasteland here, that's really good for them. They do flip Delver and find a Force of Negation on the way. However, we managed to fade the Wasteland, which is quite nice. So, cast Ponder, try and find some more mana. We do hit Delta, which is really nice. So, play that out and say go. Now, in a bit, there'll be a really good read from our opponent here, and a bit of a play mistake on our part. So I think feeling the pressure a little bit from this insectile aberration that's hitting in, and just wanting to make use of my hand as much as possible. So I have a go at going for the end of turn Brainstorm here. Opponent, very smart idea, I think maybe, but they go to aggressively surgical extract in response to our fetch, the Brainstorm. I think they're basically reading that, you know, on their turn end step, there's no real reason for us to need to fetch, unless, you know, we could wait until the upkeep. So we're probably going to be casting something, and there's only a few spells that the deck can cast for value in this instance, Brainstorm being one of them. So they surgically extract our Brainstorm, thus hitting the one in our hand, which, yeah, great read from them. So it changes what I go to fetch. I change to grabbing a green source to enable this Veil of Summer, and to maybe find a carpet on the way. So we do find the third land, so it's not going to get better if we wait too long and have to pass the turn. This Delver of Secrets can kill us on the backswing, so I just go for it, knowing that they have the Fawn in hand. They daze first, which is, you know, the proper sequencing. We force, they Fawn, and that's pretty much the match over and done with. So they actually force, and quite rightly, they do force of will targeting the original Doomsday. They don't force of will targeting our force, because if they force of will targeting our force, we could just let that resolve and then crack the Lion's Light Omen to pay for their days. But yeah, Grixis Delver, always a very tricky matchup. It's one I am totally okay throwing away with. Yeah. I don't think well, Delver is the reason I call it Zero Respect, because if I lose to that deck, I lose to that deck. I'm happy to shore up other matches. So this is an interesting one. So our 7 wasn't great, we didn't really have any permanent mana sources. 6 is fine, we've got Ritual, Force, Street Wraith, Duress, and Land. And this, you know, Sea Flood Astronomy could be any number of blue decks. Into Underground Sea, slightly smaller, and then we get a Dark Ritual. So this is an interesting, I'll just pause it here. This is an interesting one. So our poor opponent turns out, so I was thinking, right, is this Tess? Is this Doomsday? Is this Ant? Is this, you know, blue-black Reanimator in some weird form? And it turns out our poor opponent actually misclicked this ritual. So they were meant to be, it was the mirror, and they were meant to be casting a Personal Tutor to set up for a turn 2 protected Doomsday. This was their first league on MTGO playing the deck, and so yeah, they got a little bit by sort of the interface here. So it did confuse me and my friend a little bit as we were sort of playing this. So I'll get going again. So they ritual here, and then immediately cycle Street Wraith. So there's a couple of things wrong with this if they were sort of doing as expected. First of all, if they had a Street Wraith in hand, I would probably expect that to be cycled before you do anything else. If nothing else, because it helps inform your decisions on, you know, what if you've got a Personal Tutor, what you need to Personal Tutor for. Work out if you have additional protection or not, work out to help your mana situation. It could be a number of things. So I think if, as I spoke to them afterwards, if they have a Street Wraith or multiple Street Wraith in hand, they should have cycled at least one before they committed anything. They did misclick, as I said, so this ritual wasn't meant to go. So we start seeing a bit of panic. Triple Street Wraith. Into a Duress. So fair play, they were trying to really, you know, find the Doomsday off these Street Wraith cycles, did not manage to get there. Find the discard, so we're happy to let that resolve, because unless they have another Dark Ritual or a Lotus Petal plus Doomsday, they're not likely to be casting that this turn. So debating here as to what the correct take would, and they go for the Ponder. So the Ponder tells me that they're not casting Doomsday this turn because they know we've still got the Street Wraith that could cycle into a blue card for the Force. And we get a really nice draw here in terms of the blue card for our own Force. So what we can do is just fire off this Duress at them. If they have the days, they have the days. But this allows us to start disrupting their own hand, especially when there are so many cards down after failing to find anything. So they do have the days, so we just let that happen. you know, there's no reason for us to fight over that when they're already so far down on resources. Unless, again, they have exactly Dark Ritual, Doomsday, plus another Daze, plus something else, maybe. So they find Thoughtseize. Yeah, we're okay for them to fire that off. They should probably take the Force of Will. Which they do. So they are now at 11 life. We do look into drawing the second Force of Will, so that's really unfortunate for our opponent. There is some merit to considering cycling Ideas Unbound for 3 cards here, but I think until I guarantee another blue card in hand, I'm not willing to commit to that line. Also, the more cards in hand when we do it, the better our selection is for what we need to discard. So our opponent does a little bit of cantripping. Doesn't seem like they're finding much. And I just hold the petal. Playing out the petal here doesn't really do anything. We can already pay for double Daze, or even we can pay for quad Daze with this Dark Ritual. So we just chill. Again, I don't feel immensely under pressure here. Our opponent has had quite a lot of time to sculpt, find out what's up. So they're probably just looking for the Doomsday now, given that they've got the 3 black in hand. Not in hand, sorry, represented on the board. So we find the Personal Tutor, which is really good. So this just lets us, you know, Personal Tutor, grab the Doomsday, say go, hold up Force, and then, assuming our opponent doesn't do anything, play Doomsday, pass, and win on the subsequent turn. I do play out the petal just in case of the small chance of them getting double Daze as part of their protection suite, and I really would rather not burn off this Dark Ritual. To help pay for that. So opponent does some thinking. It's hard to see what their hand is here. If they have the Doomsday, then they probably should just jam it here. But it seems like they've still got a little bit of hand sculpting to do. And it might be that they've got the Doomsday, they just are not willing to commit it without a bit more protection to it. Or that they are wanting to find a ritual to be able to play around Daze a bit easier. So they do commit to casting Doomsday. We have the Force. They don't have any protection. So the guess is that if they did have protection, it would probably be a Daze, which would be not useful. So we do use the ritual here to cast our own, to play around that likely possibility. We just pitched our Ideas Unbound to be able to force, so we don't have an easy way to dig into the pile fully. Because what I'd like to be able to do here is get Oracle and Cavern of Souls together. Given, that they cast a Doomsday without using a ritual previous turn, I'm going to make a gamble that they are not able to kill us next turn or the turn after. So we just chill and do a pile which involves Cavern of Souls. So there is also an emergency daze in there that we can access should we need to. The idea being that we put Street Wraith on top, cycle into the Brainstorm into the Daze if we need it, or Brainstorm into the Oracle plus Cavern of Souls for the subsequent turn. Now you'll notice quite a lot of time I do undo and redo sort of my pile building. A lot of time I just want to make sure that it is correct. And I do something similar in paper. I will sort of hold out the prospective pile in front of me and just fan through mentally the sequence that I want to sort of run it through with. Or the potential sequences, because some of them have multiple lines involved. So here, draw the Street Wraith, just say go again. Opponent doesn't seem to have done anything, and so we don't need to do anything. Okay, opponent finds Personal Tutor, which is great for them. Means they can have another go at getting the Doomsday. So we Brainstorm first. 3 cards left, so we can't Street Wraith into Brainstorm. So we just Brainstorm, put back Daze and Oracle, cycle into the Oracle, play the Cavern, and most Doomsday lists do not run main board removal, especially if it's not splash removal, so I'm confident here just to throw the Oracle out, which gets there. In the mirror, we basically bring in every bit of interaction we can. I think I overboard slightly. I can't remember if I bring... Okay, good. So I bring 1 Reb in. It might be correct not to bring in any. The key thing about Reb is it does not counter Doomsday, and it does not interact favourably with discard. So a lot of the time, it's actually not a great card in this matchup. You have to dedicate it to, for example, in a force fight or against a cantrip. And I probably shouldn't have cut Daze there. So more than likely I'd want the Daze still in and to not bring in the Reb. However, Veil's really good, Fawn's really good, Flusterstorm really good, Surgical really good, especially if you're keeping all your discard, because just the ability to snipe Doomsday and just get rid of it from the matchup to rely on them having to cast the Street Wraith is very good. Quite often I do, as I do here, actually go for taking out rituals. A lot of the time the matchup isn't decided on who casts Doomsday first, but who has, the greater amount of interaction available, and trying, getting an early Doomsday out can win you the game, but it's not necessarily great. So first hand doesn't do anything, it's just got lands, not happy to keep that. Second hand has got all the interaction in the world, but again, nothing, so we have to keep this 5. So already looking unfavourable with all our splash colours plus Doomsday in hand. So what we do is we actually throw the Doomsday away, throw the Reb away, keep the Veil, and hope that this force plus these cantrips will be enough. Now, I'm already not expecting to win this game at this point. Although our opponent did mulligan, they've kept a 6, and they've kept a relatively decent 6, it looks like, especially on the play. And if nothing else, given that we saw Flooded Strand as one of their fetches, it would be good to see through them resolving Doomsday what sort of opposing deck we are facing. So they do take the Veil, which is interesting. We find a Dress, which is really nice. However, we still need to try and find some additional mana. We don't. We find all the protection in the world, but as I said to my friend, keeping this is us just trying not to lose, as opposed to us trying to actually win. And we'd basically have to rely on not ever tapping this island for 3 turns to keep up mana for days. So opponent here, very likely they've got, you know, fairly decent hand. They do seem to miss on a bit of mana, which is good for us. And we draw another Veil. So again, just chill here. There is some argument for casting this Brainstorm, but I want to make sure that my one guaranteed piece of interaction can be used here. So they do commit to it. So obviously we fire off the Force. We don't try and Brainstorm first because that would just walk into days. Opponent has the Force. So we pop out the Exile ready to have a little scrutiny of what their deck is doing and see what sort of pile they're building. Because, you know, from this point they're pretty much guaranteed to win, especially that we're left with, you know, single basic island, 2 black spells and a green spell, which don't really interact favourably with anything they're trying to achieve. However, we do see something of interest to note once their Exile Zone becomes available. And again, as I said, speaking to them after this, I did point out that they possibly could have done this a little better in how they build the pile. So what happens is once they commit to it, they in fact show us that they have gone for an LED pile, and it's an LED pile that doesn't utilize Cavern of Souls. So that's really interesting. And what it means is basically we actually have a chance where we could win this. If we find, say, a Brainstorm that turns into a God tier Brainstorm, we could find the Force of Will, and assuming they haven't put much other interaction in their hand, that gives us an opportunity to fight over the Oracle. A slightly better pile they could have gone when sort of discussing it with the resources that they had. They did have the opportunity for a Brainstorm into Lotus Petal Cavern pile. But as I said, they, you know, relatively new to the deck, new to the Modo interface. I think, you know, it's a reasonable line to try, especially if they're not willing to pass the turn again. However, they know part of our hand at least. They can see that we're a little light on mana. If we had any usable interaction, we probably would have committed it to fighting over the Doomsday. So I would say they probably would be in a comfortable position to pass should they be given the opportunity, or not have the availability of the same turn win, or at least the next turn win. Now, it might have been before it, you know, an argument to us, the Brainstorm that we pitched to Force, it might be an argument to commit that, if nothing else, to try and find some black mana to utilise this Duress. But, you know, I think either way we would have got blown out by days, either days on the Brainstorm itself, or days on the subsequent Force Will if we don't find the mana, or days on the Duress. So here's our opponent's deck displayed out. Interestingly, we do see the Cavern of Souls there, as I said, in their exile. We also see a Tundra, which is interesting. So our opponent seems to be on a white splash, which is not unheard of, but is definitely not the most common style. And here we go, we do find the Brainstorm, so this is our chance at greatness. We don't find greatness, but you know, I think if we had found it, then the line that our opponent took would be definitely a not great idea. So just like the game 1 versus lands, it's a situation where, you know, although it pans out, there's definitely a better way and a more robust way of being able to do it, to be able to play around all your outs. And the way that, you know, I did match 1, game 1, and the way they're doing it now gives room for error in an otherwise, you know, in theory, unlosable position. But our opponent executes the pile. They sequence everything correctly. And cast the Oracle. Now I am a bit mean here. I do click an instant in my hand to put the opponent's paying costs thing down, just to see if I could play a bit of a trick on them. They quite correctly ignore it, and just, you know, we go to game 3. So here I do correct my overboarding. I also bring back in the daisies, take out a Reb, and basically be a bit more proactive. Being on the play, there's a lot more scope for me being able to get the turn 1 protected kill. And this is a good hand. So we've got our Doomsdays, we've got plenty of interaction, and we've got some cantrips to help sculpt as well. Obviously I prefer this trop to be a C, but greedy beggars can't be choosers. So we just play it, so go. There's no reason for us to throw a Brainstorm out just yet. See what our opponent's doing. We just let them cantrip. So, as we go to the end of their turn, I do elect to utilise one of these Brainstorms here. This is quite aggressive, but logic being, if we do find Black Mana Source or Dark Ritual, which we find both, then we're set up for a really nice turn 2 kill, potentially, with double protection. So we jam. Opponent's tapped out, and we've got plenty to fight with. We also have the opportunity to, if we use this day's return a land, to actually try and win this same turn with a Brainstorm pile. So they force, we daze. They cycle through raise. And Doomsday resolves. Now we don't go for the immediate win Brainstorm pile because they could have their own days that we obviously didn't make live, holding up the trop. So we've got to respect that. So basically just build a Brainstorm pile, but we utilise Cavern of Souls here, under the assumption that we probably will have to pitch something to this Force of Will, most likely the Ponder. And just like we did in game 1, we consider having an emergency daze available. So in terms of ordering these piles, you'll notice I'll put Thassa's Oracle third down. This basically allows us that if it goes awry to access it with the Street Wraith as quickly as possible. Yeah, so this is me debating whether to cantrip or not, but I decide not to. Again, respecting that daze that they could have. There's no reason to feed into it, especially when time is on our side. An opponent just passes. So we just elect to play the land and pass as well. So there's a possibility we could have pondered there, just dug a little bit deeper, or Street Wraith then pondered. But what I'm relying on is being able to Street Wraith, end of turn Brainstorm, grab what we need. So here's the white splash coming out. So I was semi-expecting Teferi to show up, but we didn't see that game 2. So play Cavern of Souls here. Opponent shouldn't really be playing Wasteland or anything. Play the Brainstorm, grab everything we need. So we can put back Petal Street Wraith. Well, Petal Oracle. And what we could do here is play Ponder, grab the final Petal, play Oracle, no cards left, but I'm fairly confident that they don't have removal in. However, opponent gets me back with the Paranoia for Swords off the Tundra for my little trick game too, so fair play to them, but they quite rightly have not brought any in, although they do have it in the side. So yeah, interesting match there in the mirror. Two different styles, sort of one a lot leaner minor white splash, and the other my horrible bloated 4-colour monstrosity. So another game, we win the die roll, and this is an interesting hand. So my friend got very annoyed because he started crunching the numbers here. Now this hand is perfect, other than the fact it has no lands. And what makes it perfect is it's basically a hand where we would want to be able to Dark Ritual Doomsday with double force backup, or Dark Ritual Doomsday if we find a C with Daze Force backup, or potentially double force Daze backup. So my friend was crunching the numbers, trying to work out the likelihood of us getting there, and I just clicked keep, because this is the sort of hand where you'll be spending your first couple of turns cantripping to try and build anyway. And we've got 20 viable mana sources to enable this hand to go, which is the 16 mana producing lands other than Cavern and 4 Petal. And of those, 3 of them would allow us to just cantrip and develop a little bit more, so Island Vault Drop. 6 of them would let us Dark Ritual Doomsday with double force backup but not utilise this Daze, so that would be the Bayou, the Swamp and the 4 Petal. And then the other 11 would just allow us to throw it out with the full protection suite, and we are rewarded by finding the C. So 20 out of 53, about 38% or so chance of hitting what we need, and we're rewarded. We jam, opponent plays Delta, doesn't do anything else, so sure, that's fine. We board quite lightly, bringing in Double Veil because we see it's probably a blue deck, but not really wanting to commit too hard to anything else much at all. So debate, maybe one of Decay in case they've got some problem permanence or anything like that. But I think at the end of the day, just keep it light, keep it easy. Put the onus on them to try and fight what we're doing. And we've got a really good hand here. So nice and resilient, make some land drops, play some cantrips, have some protection. And again, if we find the Dark Ritual turn 1, then we just jam. So we're still not sure what our opponent's on. It's on some sort of, blue-green thing. It's probably not Delver, because likely they would have kept playing game 1. So we have a look, see what's up with this Thoughtseize that we freshly draw. And we see they're on some sort of blue-green base control build. So this could be Bug, this could be Bant. And we see they are a little bit light on lands. So we actually aggressively daze this carpet. So the reasoning for this, they haven't played land already, so they can't necessarily get value of this Brainstorm. Their other card in hand is quite bulky, and we really don't want to be able to power out the sort of 3-drop slots such as Hull Breacher, Leovold, the 4-drop Jace that we obviously know about. So we're basically, quite aggressive, sense what weakness in the water, and just try and stymie their mana a little bit. So they're now forced to Brainstorm, try and hit some mana, which they do find, but not the fetch, so they are potentially Brainstorm locked. All the while, we're just making land drops, chilling out, and getting ready to cast Doomsday. And given what sort of deck they are, I am not worried about Jace at all. Now, did you find an Ufe? We just let that through. That card, the only text it has once it's known about, given we've got so much mana, is that it's got 2 power. So I am happy for us to just let that go and play C, jam Doomsday. Especially now that we draw the Cavern. It means we can play this Ideas Unbound in hand and just drop the Cavern. So they have Force, pitch the Jace we know about, we have Force back, pitch the Brainstorm, and this basically lets us just cast Ideas Unbound, play Cavern, cast Oracle, no problem. And this Ufe does nothing. As we're building a pile, opponent sees the writing on the wall, concedes. So currently looking good on the league, 3-1, with the sort of loss being to a known weakness of the deck, and one that, as I said before, happy to concede to. So going into the final round now. So again, win the die roll. Interesting hand here. Now I actually do a play mistake here. So like I said before, in terms of when we're in the mirror, you should probably commit your Street Wraiths early on, unless you have, a valid reason not to. And here, before doing anything, I probably should have cycled the Street Wraith. So we do keep this hand because this hand is turn 2 Doomsday. So fetch the Misty, get, fetch C with Misty, grab Personal Tutor, get Doomsday, draw it next turn, and cast it all with the Brainstorm available. So the only thing this hand is missing is some protection. If I was a gambling man, I could have gone for turn 1 Doomsday here. And I think if I had got the turn 1 guaranteed win Doomsday, then maybe I would have. So what I should have done, yeah, I should have cycled first, but instead I elect to Personal Tutor first. And then for some reason, I get a bit confused on mana counting or something, and I decide to cycle into drawing the Doomsday. Not a great part, not a great line on my part. And I don't really want to just jam this Doomsday here off the petal, because that leaves me very little. Although there's some consideration to be doing this, but decide not to. However, yeah, there's the mistake. So again, I should have waited on that, because this opens up, if they're a discard deck, the opportunity for them to discard this. And there's me just doing really silly things. So finally I get some sense, just chill out a little bit, hold the brainstorm in case they do have discard, and see what our opponent does. Now our opponent doesn't do anything, which is really interesting. So that immediately makes me think they're on some sort of degenerate combo deck. They did mull to 6, so we jam. We just jam. And it turns out they just decided not to play lands for the last turn, as they fire off a fortification. So I basically brainstorm here, hoping to find a Force of Will or a Daze. I don't, however, I do find 2 black mana sources, and pairing with this Personal Tutor, and the fact we have a land drop still this turn, this lets us ignore the Fon, grab another C, Personal Tutor, and try again next turn. So that's what we do. So our opponent finally decides to play a land. Turns out they're on some sort of blue-black thing. Later turns out to be Esper. So we just jam here, hoping that, you know, that force that they had was all that they had. But turns out they had a a gluttony of riches with another Force of Will pitching Force of Will. So we're in a pretty unfavourable position here, especially if they get down any sort of threat or are able to cantrip at all. Do you find a Ritual? Probably the least useful card now in the deck. And we do see here that it is in fact Esper Mentor that we're playing against. Yeah, and that's pretty much the game over. We play through it a little bit more, but for all intents and purposes, you know, we're done now, so we'll skip ahead a little bit. As we draw lands, and they draw their deck. So, in terms of boarding, we want some Veils, because the Mentor decks often pack hymns, pack discard, pack obviously counter magic. There's some consideration to the Rebs and or Decays in case of Meddling Mage. Or other things. You can see me debating between Massacre for Meddling Mage / Mentor versus Decay. I don't want to commit too much to fighting on the board, because I think in these games, again, it's if we can get an early Dark Ritual Doomsday, that's the most powerful thing we can do. And again, maybe that's then consideration to not boarding out our Personal Tutors, as you can see I've done here. So I'm always loath to get rid of too many cyclers, because there's a lot of times, especially against the fair blue decks, where you do want to do these past turn piles that, you know, could potentially be turned into perfect multiple pass turn piles, or imperfect win on the spot, you know, if the enemy tap out. I do elect to cut the petal here, just because, you know, we're not bringing the red in, so our mana isn't necessarily under the biggest amount of duress, and I'd rather not cut basic here, just in case our opponent is playing Wasteland or some other monstrosity. I've noticed that Esper mental players or similar control players can get quite greedy, which can be quite punishing. There is some consideration to Carpenter Flowers here over some petals, which was in fact recently suggested to me as an improvement I should make in terms of my control role boarding, especially if I'm bringing in all the colours. And I think that makes sense. The only problem against the Esper decks specifically is that they are quite black heavy, so they can aggressively fetch basic swamp, scrubland, and not necessarily present as many islands as they need to. This hand's fine. Keep 7. We've got some tools, got some veils. This Volk is probably the most awkward thing about this hand. So we get rid of an excess of colour requirement. And just rely on these veils. It might be correct that I should have got rid of one of the 2 veils there. But we just chill out. Do some hand tripping. The Bayou is kind of awkward drawing that, because we would quite like... So there I probably should have put back a veil, kept the Dark Ritual. Bayou's kind of awkward because what we'd like to do... Yeah, so basically I should have kept the Dark Ritual, the reasoning being then I could fetch the Bayou with the Delta, play Veil into whatever threat they might have or discard they might have, and be able to you know, cast Dark Ritual into potentially Doomsday afterwards. So here I've relied too much on the protection I do have here in hand, which a lot of it doesn't really do anything. And again, I probably should have also considered maybe keeping the Bayou and holding this Delta to fetch a drop, thus allowing me to Dark Ritual plus Veil in the same turn. But yeah. So here again we're finding more and more interaction. I'm feeling relatively confident with Double Veil Fluster Daze in hand, so I elect to not take this Force of Will, which does prove to be a mistake. So opponent just does some more cantripping. End of turn style. And lo and behold, they find the Meddling Mage, which makes us look very silly. So very likely I should have then used one of these veils to draw a card at the very least, stop us being veil flooded, hope to find, you know, Force of Will or something. But do not. And so we're now in a sticky situation. If you remember from our boarding, we've got a single Abrupt Decay currently in the deck to deal with this. So lots of play mistakes culminating into a very unfavourable situation now. So we've left ourselves with too much interaction, not enough answers for their threats. And yeah, slowly the noose will tighten around us. Here we decide to Daze the Snap, just because this card isn't doing anything anymore. So we just need to alleviate the pressure a little bit where we can. And I think maybe our opponent got a bit aggressive playing it out then. Yeah, so we'll fast forward the rest of this because it's us cantripping, defending against him, but again, we can't win with our titular card, so unless we can find the Abrupt Decay, we are pretty much dead in the water and slowly get beaten down by small Esper bears and concede graciously. So 3-2 finish overall. I think it was a decent run. There were definitely play mistakes that hopefully we caught most of them in this review. A really good reason why you should always consider maybe reviewing your play or having someone else have a look at it. We were rewarded for a few risky decisions, punished for some other ones. And yeah, it's just all about sort of, making sure you keep getting those reps, keep working out, where you could have done things differently, having a critical eye on things, and for example, like that game 1 match 1 lands, just try not to get sort of too railroaded on a single idea or single pathway. A lot of your cards enable a lot of decision trees, and Doomsday especially enables a huge amount of decision trees. So it's basically just trying to maximize getting the most out of those decisions. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this. It was interesting to do, and once again I want to thank very much Idaru, who provided the background music, so you can find their Bandcamp link down below. But otherwise, let me know what you think about this review video. It's kind of interesting, and I've got another one lined up that I pre-recorded as well, so we'll see how that one goes as well. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.